Hey guys, and welcome back to yet another video. In this video, as you can see, we are going to be refitting the cylinder head. I've already put the new cylinder head gasket in place together with the dowels, and here we are, two people lifting the cylinder head in place. And this always is a bit of a hassle because there are some lines in the way and there are some pipes to move around and stuff. But just take your time and make sure to put it in place correctly. And feel that the cylinder head has landed on the dowels, which it has here. Then we put the brand new cylinder head bolts in. Only use new ones, don't reuse the old ones. And just put them in finger tight. Okay, here I had the cylinder head bolt tightening sequence in front of me and just went through it in my head. So you go from 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it's basically a circle. So first you have to tighten the bolts to 30 Newton meters, and I used a good torque wrench, and as you can see I'm using big long movements because you get a better torque reading when you are smooth. Just like that. So just go around and do all the bolts to 30 Newton meters. So when all the bolts are torqued to 30 Newton meters, you can go and torque them to 65 Newton meters. And always make sure to follow the same head bolt tightening pattern, and it is seen in this video and also in the Haynes manual. And make sure to use long and smooth strokes because that's how you get the best torque reading. Okay, then it's time to tighten all the bolts by 90 degrees. So I used a little marker and marked the bolts and also the cylinder head so that I could match the points that I've marked on the bolts and the cylinder head together at 90 degrees. So I made sure to mark all the bolts and use a long extension. And you can put your torque wrench away now because this is only by degrees. So I marked the bolt at one point and then I made sure to match that point to the 90-degree mark that I also made. And I'll show you later on in this video what it looks like. And again, use long and smooth strokes. I moved the camshaft timing drill bit out of the way because I could get better motion with the breaker bar that way, and I was confident that the valves were in tight and stayed in place. There we go, that was 90 degrees on every bolt. And here you can see the marks. So all the marks align at 90 degrees from where we started. So now it was time to mark them yet again, because now it's time to tighten them a full 180 degrees. so a half a rotation. And I mark the bolts again. I used the same mark on the bolts, but I marked the cylinder head in the 180-degree position, and that way I knew where to stop tightening the bolts. Okay, and following the same pattern again, we tighten it 180 degrees, so half of a full rotation, as you can see there. And I just tighten them until the marks aligned with one smooth motion. And then just do that 12 times following the tightening sequence. After 4 or 5 bolts, I noticed that, oh, I can't see which mark is which, because the 90 degree and the 180 degree are opposite of each other. So then I started marking all the bolts I had done, just to make sure that I knew where I was. So it's a good tip to do. Now the last step is to tighten a further 45 degrees. So again, I marked the cylinder head at a 45-degree angle compared to where my marks were on the bolts at the moment, and did that for all the bolts. And then it was time to tighten the last step and make sure that the points aligned. And again, after each bolt, I marked them, just to know that I had done that bolt. So I ended up with a few marks on each bolt, just to make sure that they all looked the same and that I knew where I was. And that's it. Harder than that, well, it isn't harder than that. So then you can continue with the timing chain bolts. There's one on each side, so there's a nut on the right side of the engine and there's a long bolt on the left side. And these are torqued down to 25 Newton meters. Next up, you make sure that the timing chain is on the camshaft carrier, and then you can put the bolts in finger tight. It's still important that the timing chain can move. The holes are slotted, so just put them in finger tight. And you want to put them in finger tight because you have to put the timing chain bolts in first, and these bolts retain the timing chain as well as tighten the timing chain. After you've done that, you can tighten these 3 camshaft sprocket bolts as well. So use some Loctite on the Allen key bolt, and this bolt holds the timing chain guide in place. And it goes in there on the bottom right. And that's tightened to 25 Newton meters as well. Next up we have the timing chain tensioner, and you have to put a new copper gasket on, copper O-ring, and then put it in place. Now this is tightening the timing chain, and it's also torqued down, and I think it's also 25 Newton meters for this one. And then you can torque the timing chain sprocket bolts to the camshaft, and these are also tightened to 25 Newton meters. And then it's time to put the front camshaft seal in place. Put some oil on the seal and then just push it in place. Use a socket to tap it if you need to. And make sure that it clicks in properly. That's the drill bit we've put in to the flywheel to lock that in place and keep the cylinders all in top dead center. We can take that out and put the bolt back in to cover the flywheel housing. Now I just spun the engine around a few times, just to make sure that no valves and no cylinders were hitting each other. And this is just a safety measure to make sure that the timing is set correctly and that you had your cylinders as well as your valves at top dead center for cylinder number 1. I could feel no metal to metal contact, and it just went as supposed to. So I spun it around a lot of revolutions because I just really wanted to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the timing. Well, a major milestone. The new head is installed. We've torqued all the head bolts to the proper spec, and we've put the timing chain back on with the timing chain retentioner bolts and the timing chain tensioner. I've also spun the engine around a few times just to make sure that the timing chain is on correctly and that no valves and pistons meet and kiss, because that will be devastating. So yeah, now it's just time to reinstall everything we've taken off. So I'm going to take you through that, and then we'll do a little surface as well. Obviously, because we've drained the coolant system, we're going to be filling that with a brand new coolant, and just make sure that everything is on correctly again. Okay, so as we start to work our way back on what we've taken off, we're going to be reinstalling this vacuum line. It goes to the brake vacuum booster. I've already put a new O-ring on, and then we'll just push it into the head and then thread it in. And these lines usually are 14 millimeters. There we go. And then we'll just reinstall the fuel pipes that go to the fuel pressure regulator. And it's very tricky to show you exactly how and what you're supposed to do. You can watch my other video for the fuel pressure regulator where I show you how to take it off and reinstall it. But yeah, it's the same way as the vacuum line, so I've already replaced the O-ring, and then we'll just push it in and tighten this, and then I'll show you where to connect those to the fuel cooler. Okay, that's all the fuel pipes done. We'll continue at the fuel cooler because we also took off a few coolant pipes. So we'll reinstall those, and just make sure that you know where all the clamps are. There we go. And then there's one up front as well. Now don't forget the clamps. There we go. And we had some wiring as well that comes from a wiring loom over here. And all these wires are supposed to go in between the intake, come out here and go around the front of the engine. So we'll do that. Make sure we don't forget to do that. And one of these is for the injector wiring harness, and then the other one goes around, and that's the engine temp sensor, so the coolant temp sensor. And then behind here we also have a plug for the map sensor, so we can plug that in. And while we're in between here, we'll also plug in all the glow plug connectors again. Now we'll refit the oil dipstick and make sure that there's a oil seal on it. And it should be pushed in tightly so it doesn't come out. Yeah, there we go. It should require some force to pull it out. And then just secure it with this small little bolt. There we go, this one. So now we've reconnected all the fuel lines to the fuel cooler as well as the fuel pressure regulator. But on the fuel pressure regulator there's also a sensor there, so we'll have to plug that in again, and don't forget that. I think it might be, yeah, well, it must be a pressure sensor or something. So now all the fuel system is completely connected, as well as the fuel cooler. So now we can go on, connect all the coolant lines again. And for that we'll put the lift hook back on. Okay, and with the cooling system in place, just double check under the engine that you've done up the drain plug again, because we emptied the cooling system using the drain plug on the bottom before doing this job. We just need to make sure that that's connected again and tight before we try and fill the engine with coolant. Okay, I've now reconnected the coolant sensor wire and hooked it up to the spots that it's supposed to, and the cooling system is in place. Now we can do the turbo and turbo oil feed, and for this we have a brand new gasket. Now the oil feed on the turbo, the banjo fitting, is supposed to get 2 new copper washers. So we have those here, and then we'll install it to the turbo. You put one on with the washer already on the bolt, and then you put one washer underneath. And then you have to get everything located properly, and like everything else, it's supposed to be torqued down to 25 Newton meters. So now that basically everything is hooked back up, we're talking about the coolant system, the fuel system, as well as the oil. Now we can start installing the injectors again, and I have already replaced the injector seals and washers, and I have a really good video about how to take them out and how to reinstall the injectors, but I'm going to show you just quickly here to shorten down this video. And if you get any questions when viewing this, then please go and watch my other video if you want to know anything in detail about the injectors and how to install them. And if you still have questions after that, then just please comment them down below. Okay, so now it's time to actually install the injectors into the new head. And we have the brand new copper washers here, as well as the new oil seals, fuel to oil seals. So we'll push them in. As usual, they go in a specific order, and I've made sure to maintain this order correctly. And then you just click them in, just like that. You have to hear and feel a click. And you might have to rotate the engine because the lobes might be in the way. And now we're going to be fitting the clamps again onto the injectors, and all the bolts are replaced as well. And these clamps should be torqued to 32 Newton meters. And now we can put the rocker shaft back on. And these bolts have also been replaced. And then tightened gradually from the middle out. And then torque down to 32 Newton meters. Okay, and when setting the rocker adjuster screws, you have to get the lobe to the full lift position. So we're going to be spinning the engine to full lift on the first cylinder. Just like that. So now cylinder number 1 is at full lift here. And now we screw the screw. Now we screw the screw all the way down until it bottoms out. There, I can't turn it anymore, and then we'll turn it one complete turn back. So half and 1. And then we can tighten this little nut on top to lock the adjuster screw in place. There we go. And then we just go and do that for all the cylinders. There we go, and after you've adjusted all the rocker adjusting screws, it is important that you spin the engine around 2 times just to make sure that none of the injectors are bottoming out. Well, it feels like there's nothing touching or anything, so I think that's good enough. Now we can refit the injector wiring harness and plug it in. So now we can install the rocker cover and the new rocker cover gasket. Okay, so I've drained the oil. It's now time to fill it and put some stuff back on. So I still have the intake pipe to put it back on, as well as the boost pipe at the EGR. Other than that, we just have to hook those things up, put the fan back on, and also fill the coolant system. That's basically it. Okay guys, so I think that everything is in order, everything is connected. We've got oil, we've got coolant, we've got diesel, all the plugs are connected back. Yeah, everything is hooked up as it's supposed to, so I guess this is where we started. And we'll just let it prime for a moment. Can't see any diesel leaks. Well guys, as you can see, it is alive and it's out of the garage finally. Now we can swap the tires for the big ones again and take it out for a test.